Well, good morning, and greetings from our Elyria campus. My name is David Hoovler, and I have the privilege of serving as campus pastor at Elyria Friends. And our friends in Elyria are will be joining us this morning by video. So I would invite you to just send them a very warm greeting here from North Olmsted. My friends, I'll see you later this afternoon. Pastor Jeff asked me to share this morning as he was just returning from Malawi, and turned out to be a good thing as he's under the weather. But it's also, I'm so glad to be here because I was saying to Pastor Rich earlier this morning, I think it's been over a year since I've been able to be here on a Sunday morning. And so it's very good to be here to worship with you this morning. We've been busy in Elyria since our formal launch in January. We've been a part of a number of community events. We have participated at the Third Thursdays events throughout the summer. We were at the Elyria Apple Festival in September, and we're really grateful to be able to connect with the community that way. We had our Vacation Bible School in June and hosted Friends Fall Festival about a month ago. That saw more than 150 people from the community come to visit our campus, enjoying an afternoon of games and crafts and food trucks and a time of worship as well. This afternoon at the campus, we're packing 300 shoe boxes for Operation Christmas Child. And we've also taken over a warming drive in the community from another organization to distribute winter wear to people in need throughout the cold months here. I'm moved by what God has done in our midst over this past year. I'm humbled by the hard work of our planning team and so many others who've had that vision to reach out to serve our community with the love of Jesus. And I'm grateful for the work that God has been doing to draw people to himself. I was looking a year ago in October, we were averaging about 24 people at the church on a Sunday morning. And this October, we averaged almost 45. We're seeing people return to Christ, come to Christ. Now, we've done advertising and we've been at those community events, and those are good things. But what's most encouraging to me is that by far the greatest number of people who have joined that congregation has been because of people who have invited friends and family members. And we're seeing, we're seeing some of those friends and family members inviting other friends and family members to come. This is not because of me, praise God. It's because God is creating a little group of people who are getting to know one another and love one another, and who keep the circle open to welcome others with genuine warmth and the love of Christ. And we have cookies. You're more than welcome to come and visit us on a Sunday morning. I won't tell Pastor Jeff. Thank you for all of your continued support with prayer, those of you who have helped with different events. I'm so thankful to continue to be a part of this church, a part of our staff, and to be able to continue serving as one church as we figure out what that is, to be one church in two locations. At Elyria this fall, we've been going through a series on Sunday mornings reading the accounts of the patriarchs in Genesis, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We've been looking at these families of our forefathers and foremothers in faith and seeing what we can learn from their stories as we seek to live as the family of God. So I'm just continuing with that series today. You can jump right in for 1 week, and we'll continue on. But I invite you to turn with me to Genesis chapter 29. To kind of catch up on where things have gone, Jacob has skipped town after deceiving his father. He stole Isaac's blessing that he'd intended for Jacob's brother Esau. And Jacob travels to the land his mother and grandfather came from, and he meets his uncle Laban and Laban's daughters. And so I'll begin reading with Genesis 29 in verse 14. And as we open God's word together, I would invite you to stand as you're able. After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to make love to her." So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and Jacob made love to her. And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as her attendant. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" Laban replied, "It's not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work." And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her attendant. Jacob made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. May God add his blessing to this word. Please be seated. As we've been going through these accounts in Genesis, it's very quickly become clear that there's a lot that we didn't cover on the flannel graphs in Sunday school. And to me, that speaks to the truth of these stories. Why would you make up such problematic and, let's be honest, embarrassing stories about your own ancestors? These are the very people who give you legitimacy for your nation. To a large degree, especially in that culture, they define who you are. If you were making up stories, why not make up better ones? As we see here today, Jacob takes this whole sister wives thing very literally, and he discovers why it's a bad idea. In fact, this is one of many times that we see the patriarchs violating laws that God later gives to his people. For example, Leviticus 18:18 says, "Do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife." Rival wife. Jacob discovers that. So that's our lesson for today. Don't marry more than one person at a time. Amen? Amen. Now receive the benediction. You probably didn't need me to tell you that. But there's still a lot that we can learn from this story of Jacob's messed up family. Very briefly, I'd like us to consider what their story shows us about comparison. I think it shows us that we should not compare when we love. Don't compare your gifts, and don't compare your suffering. So first, don't compare when you love. We're told that Jacob was in love with Rachel, but not with Leah. And we're not really told why, except for the description that Rachel was beautiful in face and figure, but Leah had some kind of problem with her eyes. Now, of course, we're all naturally drawn to certain people, aren't we? We don't really have much control over who we're attracted to. Those of you who are married or dating know that there was something that drew you to that particular person more than anybody else. At least I hope there was. But even in our platonic friendships, we'll just find ourselves liking some people more than others. And that's not wrong. But love, the sort of love that God calls us to, isn't just some kind of attraction or feeling. It's a choice, and it's an action. It's choosing to put others before ourselves, and it's serving others regardless of what they can offer to us. And in that sense, we can't love someone, or we shouldn't love someone based on how they compare to others. Their beauty, their wealth, their wisdom or talent, how well they behave, what their political views are, even what sports teams they root for. I know that's a stretch. Why is this important? Because God didn't choose us because of how we compare to others. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians, "Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him." My friends, God doesn't love you because you are more beautiful or more wise or stronger than anybody else. God doesn't love you because you're better than anybody else. Back in 1980, I shared this in the Galatians class a few weeks ago on Wednesday. There was a Swedish psychologist named Ola Svensson who conducted a study. He asked American college students to rank their driving ability among their peers. And the results? 88% ranked themselves above average when it came to their driving safely. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I know that's not how averages work. Just like our driving, we like to think that we're above average when it comes to being good enough. We like to think that we can get to heaven by being good enough, by being better than that guy or those people. Now, when it comes to comparing our virtue to others, we probably don't do any better than when we compare our driving to others. But an inaccurate comparison isn't the real problem. The problem is that that comparison doesn't even matter at all. Because the message of the gospel is that we can't do enough good works to get into heaven. God doesn't grade on a curve. We need a restored relationship with him, but we're the ones who walked away and turned our backs on him. Our situation is so desperate that Jesus needed to die to save us. But he loved you so much that he died to save you. So since God didn't compare you to others in choosing to love you, don't compare when you show love to one another. And don't compare your gifts. We're told that God shows mercy to Leah by giving her the ability to conceive. But Rachel sees that blessing, and she resents her husband and God for not giving her the same blessing. Thus begins years of comparison and competition between Leah and Rachel over their children and their husband's love. They see the number of their sons as indicating their worth. And they're so desperate that they even further divide their husband's affections. They give Jacob their servants to bear children on their behalf. And most of the sons are actually named to reflect this conflict. Did you ever think about that? Most of the 12 tribes of Israel were named out of spite. Levi comes from the Hebrew that means attached, because Leah hoped that he would cause Jacob to become attached to her. Rachel names her servant's son Dan, which means vindicated, because she feels vindicated. Naphtali means my struggle. Even when Rachel finally has her own son, she names him Joseph, which means may he add. She's already looking for another. We also run into trouble when we compare our gifts from God with others. Sometimes these are things that the world also makes comparisons on. Why is he making more money than I am? How is she driving that car? They went where on their vacation? Well, at least I've got my finances in order. And I'm clearly a better parent than they are. But we do this in the church too. We compare our spiritual gifts. Where does she get that insight into the Bible? Why don't I have it? I'm a better singer than that person sitting behind me. I would have planned that event better. Why is their church growing more than ours? But we're all gifted differently. Comparison only leads us into pride or despair. Our gifts are given by God to fulfill different roles within his body, within our church and among the church universal. Each one is important, and all of them work together so that we can serve each other and glorify God together. So learn from Leah and Rachel this morning. Don't compare your gifts. The third thing is don't compare your suffering. Everybody's got trouble in this story of Jacob's family. Jacob is deceived by his uncle, and if we're honest, he's left with no good path forward. We have no indication of whether Leah supported her father's plan, but regardless, she winds up married to a man who doesn't love her. We also have no idea what Rachel thought of that wedding arrangement. Most likely, she didn't have any say in the matter. She winds up as Jacob's second wife, but his favorite one, but she's unable to have children for years. The servants have no voice at all through the entire story. They don't even get to name their own sons. The children are made pawns of their mother's rivalry. And Laban eventually loses his daughters, his grandchildren, and most of his wealth because of his deception. It's a bad situation all around. But the truth is, in this world, everybody's got trouble. Each of us has different trouble. I hope yours doesn't look remotely like Jacob's family. But many of us hide it very well. So when we compare our troubles, we're usually comparing my inside to somebody else's outside. One of the things about being a pastor is that I wind up seeing a little bit more of the trouble that people hide from many others. And I know I would never want to swap my trouble for any of yours. But we can also compare our suffering with the way that we think things should be, and that can lead us, just like Rachel, to doubt God or even to turn away from him. Now, just like when it comes to our love, just like when it comes to our gifts, we shouldn't compare our suffering to that of others. Just like comparing our gifts that can either lead us to pride or to despair. But we do need to get a broader view. Paul writes in Romans 8:18, "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." When we have eternity in view, the sufferings of this life begin to fade just a little bit. And that leads us to where I'd like to close this morning. In the middle of this story is one shining moment in the middle of all of the trouble, in the middle of all of the sin and deception. Leah gives birth to her fourth son, and she doesn't compare. She doesn't compare her husband's love for her to his love for someone else. She doesn't compare her blessings to her sister's. She doesn't compare in how much she's suffering compared to somebody else. She simply says, "Now I will praise the Lord." She focuses on God, and she chooses to respond with praise. Tragically, she goes back to her comparisons and her strife later, but we can learn from this moment of grace in her life. Because that son, that's Judah, the ancestor of King David, the ancestor of Jesus. And the writer of Hebrews reminds us that our focus shouldn't be on comparing ourselves with others. Our focus needs to be on Jesus. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Jesus pioneered and perfected faith, so we can be set free from comparing our works or our gifts. Jesus endured unfathomable suffering and shame, so we can stop comparing our troubles to others, so that we won't grow weary or lose heart. And Jesus did all of this why? For the joy set before him. My friends, you and I are the joy that was set before him. It was love for you that took him to the cross, so that you could be restored to him for all eternity, not because of how you compare to anybody else, just because you are you. It's not just Jacob's family that's messed up. But as you go through this messed up world, fix your eyes on Jesus. Use your gifts that he has given to you for his glory, and love others without compare.